AITA for skipping my twin sister's rehearsal dinner after my parents excluded me over my allergy. I'm Jessica, 31, and being a twin means people assume you grew up with a built-in best friend. For a long time, I wanted to believe that was true for Rachel and me. When we were kids, we shared almost everything. We split fries without asking, traded jackets when one of us forgot ours, slept in each other's beds after bad dreams, and had a stupid little signal we used at family parties when one of us wanted to leave. It was just 2 taps against the side of our leg. If the other twin saw it, we made an excuse and disappeared together. We also had the same terrible birthday cakes every year because our dad insisted a sheet cake with both our names on it was more efficient. The difference between us didn't become a family identity until my food allergies got more serious. I had reactions as a kid, but by my teens I had a reaction severe enough that my parents had to start taking it seriously in public, at least on paper. I carried an EpiPen. I learned to ask about ingredients. I learned what cross-contamination meant before most kids my age knew what a 401k was. My mother, Linda, never called it an allergy unless a doctor was in the room. At home it was your food thing. If I asked a server to check the kitchen, Mom would sigh. If I brought my own snack somewhere, she would say I was being dramatic. If I declined a dessert because nobody could tell me what was in it, she would joke that I had trust issues. Rachel didn't have allergies. That was the beginning of the family version of us. Rachel was easy. Jessica was difficult. Rachel could eat anywhere. Jessica needed a conversation with the server. Rachel could go with the flow. Jessica needed accommodations. Rachel was relaxed. Jessica made things complicated. My dad, Howard, was quieter about it, but he reinforced the same thing in a way that was harder to argue with. Your mother is just tired. Don't make a big thing out of dinner. It's one meal. Can you let this go? He was the kind of person who could watch someone create a problem for an hour, then turn to the person objecting and say, "Why are you escalating?" For years, Rachel and I survived that by staying close to each other. Then we got older, built separate lives, and I started noticing something I should have noticed sooner. My parents didn't just compare us. They carried information between us. If Rachel was annoyed with me, Mom would call and tell me Rachel was really hurt. If I had a disagreement with Mom, Rachel would somehow hear that I was in one of my moods. If Rachel needed something and I helped, Mom was usually in the middle of it. If I said no, somehow the story became that Rachel asked me directly and I rejected her. I should have stopped using my parents as messengers years ago. That part is on me. Felt easier. That was the trap. By the time Rachel got engaged to Owen, our relationship wasn't bad exactly, but it was thinner than it used to be. We still texted. We still sent each other pictures of things that reminded us of childhood. I helped her with some wedding details. I looked over the guest list when she was worried she had missed people. I sent her money when the alterations on her dress cost more than she expected. I never treated those things like favors she owed me. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to believe the distance between us was normal adult life, not something more deliberate. Owen was polite to me but reserved. I assumed that was just his personality. Later I learned he thought I didn't particularly care about Rachel. That wasn't an impression he came up with on his own. About 6 weeks before the wedding, Mom called me about the rehearsal dinner. She said the cost had gone up because the original head count had changed and the restaurant required a larger deposit than she and Dad expected. Then she said, "I had an idea, but I don't want you to feel pressured." That sentence from my mother has never once been followed by something without pressure. She asked if I could cover the deposit as part of my wedding gift to Rachel. I asked how much. It was a lot, but not enough to create a financial crisis for me. I had already planned to give Rachel a meaningful gift, and I liked the idea of doing something practical. I told Mom I needed to see the invoice first. She sent it. The restaurant looked legitimate. The amount matched what she said. The deposit was non-refundable within 30 days. The remaining balance would be due near the event date. I asked whether Rachel knew. Mom said, "No, don't mention it yet. Rachel gets emotional about money. Let her feel taken care of for once." I remember pausing at that. Rachel had never acted entitled about money with me. But Mom made it sound like this was about protecting Rachel's feelings, not hiding anything. So I paid the deposit. The confirmation email came directly to me because I used my card. It listed me as payer, showed the deposit amount, and included a note near the bottom that said, "Allergy accommodations pending." I emailed the restaurant back and explained that I had a severe shellfish allergy and would be attending the rehearsal dinner. I asked what their process was for preventing cross-contamination. They replied that the event coordinator would need the final guest list and allergy information from the hosts, but they were happy to discuss accommodations once the menu was finalized. I forwarded that to Mom. She replied, "I already handled your food thing." I asked what that meant. She wrote, "They know." I should have pushed harder. Instead, I saved the email and moved on. Around the same time, Rachel started texting differently. Not dramatically, just shorter. I would ask a question and get "sure" instead of a normal answer. I sent her a picture of an old ornament we had made in elementary school, and she reacted with a heart but didn't say anything. Once I asked if she was overwhelmed and wanted help, and she wrote, "I'm fine. I don't want you to feel obligated." That wording bothered me because it didn't sound like her. Then about a week before the wedding, Mom called and asked if I was free to talk like an adult. That should have warned me. Dad was on speakerphone. Mom started with, "Rachel is under a lot of stress." I said I knew. "She really needs this week to be calm." "Okay." "And the rehearsal dinner is going to be tight." I waited. Then she said, "We think it might be better if you don't come." For a second I thought I had misunderstood. I said, "To Rachel's rehearsal dinner?" Mom said, "Don't say it like that." "How should I say it?" Dad jumped in. "It's just one dinner, Jess." I asked why I was suddenly not supposed to attend a rehearsal dinner for my twin sister when I was also in the wedding party. Mom said, "Because every meal becomes a production." I knew what she meant before she said the rest. Your allergy makes everybody nervous. The staff gets nervous, you get nervous, then people are asking questions, and Rachel deserves one night that isn't about you. I didn't yell. I think that made Mom more uncomfortable. I asked, "Did Rachel say she doesn't want me there?" There was a pause. Mom said, "Rachel doesn't want drama." That wasn't my question. Dad said, "Don't interrogate your mother." I asked again, "Did Rachel ask you to tell me not to come?" Mom said, "She's trying to get married. She should not have to manage your reaction on top of everything else." I felt something in me drop. Not anger first. Embarrassment. I had paid thousands of dollars toward a dinner where apparently my own sister didn't want me. I asked, "Then why am I still on the invoice?" Dad said, "Don't make this about money. I'm asking a practical question." "It's paid." That was not the question either. Mom exhaled sharply. "You offered to help your sister. A gift doesn't become conditional because you're upset." I said, "I didn't offer. You asked." She went quiet. Then she said the line that stuck with me. "Just let your sister have one night that isn't about you." The call ended with Dad telling me not to blow up the wedding over dinner. I sat on my couch for a long time afterward. My EpiPens were in my purse by the door. I keep two and check the expiration dates more obsessively than most people check their oil. I looked at them and thought about all the times I had been told I was difficult because I didn't want to risk dying at dinner. Then I thought about Rachel. I wanted to text her something angry. Instead I sent, "Mom and Dad told me it would be better if I skipped the rehearsal dinner. I'm not trying to add stress. I just want to know if that's what you want." She didn't answer for almost 3 hours. Then she wrote, "I wish you just told me you didn't want to be there." That sentence hurt more than what my parents had said, because I read it as confirmation. In my head, Rachel thought I was looking for a way out, and Mom had been trying to soften it. I wrote, "I didn't say that." Rachel replied, "Not doing this tonight." That was the whole exchange. The next few days were strange. Aunt Beth called and asked if I was feeling okay about the wedding. I said yes. She said, "Your mom mentioned you're having a hard time with everything being focused on Rachel." I almost laughed. Instead I said, "Did she?" Beth made one of those careful family noises people make when they think they are being diplomatic. She just said you decided the rehearsal dinner would be easier if you sat it out. That was the first time I realized the story had already gone public. My cousin Derek later sent me a casual text saying, "Hope you and Ratch are good. Weddings make everyone nuts." No accusation, but enough to tell me people had been talking. I didn't correct anyone. That was another mistake. I told myself I would get through the wedding, then deal with it. The afternoon of the rehearsal dinner, Mom texted me, "Left something for you so you don't feel excluded." About 10 minutes later, I heard a car door close outside. When I opened my front door, there was a restaurant takeout box on my porch. On top, in Mom's handwriting, was one word: safe. I called her. She didn't answer. I texted, "Is this from the same restaurant?" She replied, "Yes." I told them no shellfish. I wrote, "Was it prepared separately?" She replied, "Jessica, it's safe. Please don't turn this into another thing." That should have been enough for me not to touch it. Usually I wouldn't. But I was upset, hungry, and stupidly wanting to believe my mother had done one thing carefully after excluding me for the same medical issue. I opened the container. It looked simple. Chicken, potatoes, vegetables. No obvious shellfish. There was no ingredient label. No allergen note from the restaurant. Just my mother's handwritten safe. I ate a few bites. Within minutes, my mouth started tingling. If you have ever had a serious food allergy, you know there is a specific kind of denial that happens in the first seconds. Maybe it is spice. Maybe I bit my lip. Maybe I am anxious. Then my throat felt wrong. I stood up too fast and knocked the fork onto the floor. My chest tightened. I grabbed my purse, pulled out an EpiPen, and used it. I had done it before, but doing it alone is different. Your hands are trying to shake while you are telling them not to. Called 911. At some point my phone slipped out of my hand and went under the chair. I could hear the dispatcher but had to get down on the floor to reach it. I remember being angry that the front door was locked. Not afraid first. Angry. Because I had to make myself stand back up to unlock it for the paramedics. The next part is hospital blur. Questions. Monitors. Another medication. A nurse asking who my emergency contact was. I gave Rachel's name almost automatically. Then I remembered she was at the rehearsal dinner and said, "Actually, don't call her. She's at an event." The nurse said they still needed someone listed. I gave Rachel's number anyway. I don't know exactly how long later it was when the nurse came back and said, "Your sister is outside. She says you paid for that dinner." I stared at her. "What?" "She's asking to see you." Rachel came in still dressed for the rehearsal dinner. Her hair was done. She had one heel in her hand and the other still on her foot, like she had taken one off while driving or running through the parking lot. She looked furious. Not wedding stress furious. Scared furious. She said, "What happened?" I told her. She asked, "You ate food from the restaurant?" "Mom left it at my house." Rachel looked confused. "Mom left dinner?" "She said it was my safe plate." Rachel sat down. "She told me you refused to come." I looked at her. "What?" "She said you didn't want to deal with your allergy stuff, and you were sick of being treated like the sister of the bride." For about 5 seconds, neither of us said anything. Then I said, "She told me you didn't want me there because my allergy would make the night about me." Rachel's face changed. It wasn't instant belief. It was more like her brain had hit something it couldn't fit into the story she already had. She said, "I never said that." I asked her if you did. "I never said that." "I texted you." "You texted me after they told me you had already decided not to come." That was when I remembered Rachel's message. "I wish you just told me you didn't want to be there." I pulled up my phone. She pulled up hers. For the next 20 minutes we compared messages like two people reconstructing a car accident. Mom had told Rachel 2 weeks earlier that I was pulling away because I hate being second place. Mom had told me Rachel was overwhelmed by my special needs. Rachel had told Mom she wanted me at everything. Mom had replied that she would handle Jessica. I had told Mom I wanted the restaurant allergy process confirmed. Mom had told Rachel I was making food demands, and had decided I might skip the dinner. Dad had told Rachel I was being sensitive. Dad had told me Rachel needed one night without me. Then Rachel showed me something I hadn't seen. She had a wedding packet Owen had put together with contracts, confirmations, and invoices. The rehearsal dinner invoice was in it. The payment line said, "Deposit paid by Jessica." Rachel tapped it. "What is this?" I looked at her. "You didn't know?" She shook her head. "Mom and Dad said they paid the deposit." I felt sick again, and it had nothing to do with the allergy. I told her Mom had asked me to pay it as a surprise gift. Rachel stared at the invoice. Then she said very quietly, "They told Owen they were covering this because they wanted us to have one less thing to worry about." That explained Owen. Or at least some of it. My parents were not only telling Rachel I didn't want to show up. They were using my money to prove they did. Rachel asked how much I had paid. I told her. She swore. Then she asked why I had never told her. I said, "Mom told me not to." Rachel laughed once without humor. Of course she did. I was still in the ER when Owen arrived. He had left the dinner after Rachel called him. His first question after checking that I was okay was practical. Did the restaurant know about the allergy? I showed him the email that said accommodations were pending. Then I showed him Mom's reply saying she had handled it. Rachel said the staff at the dinner hadn't mentioned any allergy meal for me because, as far as they knew, I was no longer attending. That was the first moment I really understood the takeout box. Mom hadn't ordered me some carefully prepared separate meal. She had taken food from the same event and decided it was safe enough because she couldn't see shellfish on it. The next morning after I was discharged and had slept for a few hours, I called the restaurant. I didn't call my parents. I spoke with the event coordinator. I kept notes. I asked her to confirm 3 things. First, who paid the deposit? Me. Second, whether the remaining balance was authorized to be charged to my card. She said their system showed my card as the payment method connected to the event, but final authorization could be changed before the balance was processed. Third, whether a medically accommodated meal had been confirmed for me. She checked. It had not. The allergy accommodation was still marked pending because the hosts never completed the required conversation with the chef and event staff. I asked about the takeout. She was careful, which I appreciated. She said they had packed leftovers and extra portions for the hosts. None of those boxes were labeled by the restaurant as allergy safe. Their kitchen handled shellfish. They could not guarantee that a regular meal had not come into contact with allergens. I said, "So if a box said safe on it, that label did not come from you?" She said no. I thanked her. Then I asked her to remove my card authorization for any future charges. She reminded me the deposit was non-refundable. I said I understood. I'm not disputing the deposit. I'm just not authorizing anything else. She confirmed the remaining balance would need another payment method. I also asked that any future menu or payment changes go through Rachel or Owen, not me, and not my parents using my card information. Then I emailed myself everything. The original payment receipt. The allergy email. The confirmation that the accommodation was still pending. The note from my call. I took screenshots of the messages from Mom and Dad. I asked Rachel to send me screenshots of what they had told her. I did all of that before I called my parents. When I finally did, Mom answered on the second ring. She started with, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm home." She said, "Thank God. You scared us." I asked, "What exactly did you give me last night?" Her voice changed. "It was chicken." "I know what it looked like. Where did it come from?" "The restaurant." "Was it prepared separately?" "Jessica, I told them no shellfish." "The restaurant says they never confirmed an allergy accommodation." Silence. Then she said, "Well, there was no shellfish in your box." I said, "You don't know that." I looked at it. "That is not how cross-contamination works." She snapped, "You've eaten at restaurants before." I said yes, after confirming how the food was prepared. She switched tracks immediately. "I was trying to make sure you weren't left out. You told me not to come." Because Rachel was stressed. Rachel says she wanted me there. Another silence. This one was longer. Then Dad got on the phone. Jess, don't turn this into a war. I asked, why did you tell Rachel I refused to come? He said, that's not exactly what we said. She has the messages. Mom said in the background, this is unbelievable. I kept going. Why did you tell her you paid the deposit? Dad said, we were going to cover the rest. That wasn't my question. He didn't answer. So I said, I removed my card from the remaining balance. That got a reaction. Mom came back on. You did what? I'm not paying any more toward the rehearsal dinner. You can't do that 2 days before the wedding. I already did. You are punishing Rachel. I'm not asking for my deposit back. You promised that money. I paid the deposit. I did not promise unlimited access to my card after you banned me from the event and lied about why. Dad said, this is a family matter. You should not have dragged the restaurant into it. I said, the restaurant has my credit card. They were already in it. He said, you're escalating. I almost laughed. Instead I said, no, I'm ending my authorization. Mom started crying. Not quiet crying. The kind where you can hear that the crying is supposed to affect the conversation. She said, I cannot believe you're doing this to your sister during her wedding week. I said, then tell Rachel the truth and ask her what she wants to do. She doesn't need this stress. She is already in it. Dad said, you're being vindictive. I said, I'm not funding an event I was banned from. That was the only line I had that felt rehearsed, but I hadn't planned it. It was just true. They hung up on me. Within an hour, Rachel called. She and Owen had spoken to the restaurant. The remaining balance was much higher than they had realized because my parents had upgraded a few things and added people. Rachel sounded exhausted. She said, I'm not asking you to put your card back. I said, good. Then she said, but I need to know if you're going to come to the wedding. I asked, do you want me there? She was quiet. Yes. Because you want me there, or because everyone will talk if I'm not? That's not fair. Maybe not. She sighed. I want you there. I said, then I'll come to the ceremony. I'm not promising anything beyond that yet. She didn't love the answer, but she accepted it. My parents did not. They spent the next day calling relatives. I know that because Beth called me again. This time she was less gentle. She said, your mother says you pulled funding at the last minute because you weren't getting enough attention. I said, would you like to see the invoice? Beth paused. What invoice? The one with my name on it. Another pause. Then she said, Jessica, what is going on? I told her I was not going to explain it over the phone if everyone was already hearing separate versions. Apparently my parents had already planned a family gathering at their house that evening. The original purpose was supposed to be a casual pre-wedding get-together for relatives arriving early. It became very quickly a meeting about me. Mom called and said, if you care about your sister at all, you'll come clear this up. I almost refused. Then Rachel called. She said, please come. I want this said once with me there. So I went. I brought a folder. Not because I wanted to perform. Because I had learned what happened when I relied on memory while my parents controlled the story. The gathering was not huge. Rachel and Owen were there. My parents, Beth, Derek, a few other relatives who had already heard enough that pretending nothing was happening would have been ridiculous. Mom started before I had even sat down. She said, I just want everyone to understand that this wedding has become very stressful, and Jessica made a decision that has put Rachel in a terrible position. Rachel said, Mom. Mom held up a hand. Let me finish. That gesture told me everything. Even now she thought the room belonged to her. She said I had promised to help with the rehearsal dinner, then withdrew support, because I was upset about a misunderstanding regarding dinner attendance. I asked, which misunderstanding? She looked at me like I was being difficult on purpose. You know exactly what I mean. I said, I want to hear you say it. Dad cut in. Jessica, don't make this hostile. I looked at Rachel. She looked miserable, but she nodded once. So I opened the folder. I started with the least emotional thing. The payment receipt. I put it on the table. This is the deposit I paid after Mom asked me to cover it as a surprise gift for Rachel. Mom said, "Nobody is denying that." Rachel said, "You denied it to me." Mom turned to her. "We did not deny it. We simplified things because you were stressed about money." Owen said, "You told us you paid it." Dad said, "Because we intended to cover the event." Owen asked, "Then why was Jessica's card attached to the remaining balance?" Dad looked annoyed. "That was temporary." I said, "The restaurant did not consider it temporary." Mom said, "This is exactly what I mean. We are turning a family celebration into an accounting exercise." I pulled out the next page. This is the email from the restaurant. The allergy accommodation was still pending. Mom said, "They knew about it." No, they knew I had requested information. The hosts never finalized it. "You would have been fine if you had come." I looked at her. "I ended up in the ER from food you said was safe." She said, "That was an accident." I said, "I know." That seemed to throw her off. I continued, "I am not saying you poisoned me on purpose. I am saying you decided you knew better than the restaurant's allergy process, wrote safe on a box they did not certify as safe, and left it at my house after telling me I was too medically inconvenient to attend the dinner." Nobody said anything for a moment. Not a dramatic silence. People just didn't know where to look. Mom said, "I was trying to include you." Rachel said, "After you told her not to come." Mom turned on her. "I was protecting you." Rachel said, "From what?" "From stress." "Did I ask you to keep Jessica away?" Mom didn't answer. Rachel asked again. "No, you didn't." It was the closest Mom came to admitting it. I took out the screenshots. I didn't read every message aloud. I didn't need to. I passed Rachel's messages to Beth and Derek, then mine. On Rachel's side, Mom had said I didn't want to deal with my allergy and didn't want to spend the week in Rachel's shadow. On my side, Mom had said Rachel wanted a night without my allergy becoming the focus. Dad had backed both versions. Derek looked at my dad and said, "You told me Jess was skipping because she was jealous." Dad said, "I never used that word." Derek said, "You said she was having a hard time not being the center of attention." Dad rubbed his forehead. "This is getting distorted." I said, "That is the problem." Mom pointed at me. "You are enjoying this." I said, "No." She gave me a look that was almost a challenge. I said, "I'm not enjoying finding out my own sister thought I abandoned her because you told her I did." Rachel looked down. That hurt her too. I could tell. Then Mom started crying again. She said, "I have done everything for both of you, and now I am being painted like some monster because I tried to make one weekend easy." That was when Beth spoke. She had the invoice in front of her. Beth had been on Mom's side less than 24 hours earlier. She said, "Linda, I have one question." Mom wiped her face. "What?" Beth pointed at the invoice. "If Jessica wasn't supposed to be at the dinner, why is her name on the bill?" Mom opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Dad said, "Because she volunteered to help." I said, "Before you told me not to come." Beth looked at Mom. "So you let her pay, told Rachel you paid, then told everyone Jessica chose not to attend?" Mom said, "That is not a fair summary." Beth said, "Which part is wrong?" Mom stood up and walked into the kitchen. Dad followed her. That was basically the end of the meeting. There was no applause. Nobody gave a speech about how brave I was. One aunt avoided eye contact. Derek apologized awkwardly for believing what he had heard. Beth said she was sorry she called me selfish. A couple of relatives still thought I should have waited until after the wedding to remove my card because timing matters. I understood that argument more than they expected. My decision did affect Rachel and Owen. They hadn't created the lie. Rachel had believed it, but so had I. The difference was that the money was mine, and the remaining charge hadn't happened yet. I couldn't make myself continue paying just to preserve the appearance that nothing was wrong. Rachel and Owen ended up shrinking the rehearsal dinner instead of canceling it. They removed a few extras my parents had added, cut a more expensive drink package, and reduced the final number of people. My parents paid part of the remaining balance themselves. Rachel and Owen covered the rest. I didn't ask for my deposit back. I could have pushed for reimbursement from my parents, but the restaurant's policy was clear and I had knowingly paid it as a gift before everything fell apart. I decided losing that money was the cleanest way to end my involvement. Still stung. A lot. Especially because Mom later told someone I had left them with thousands of dollars unexpectedly, as if my card had been family property. Rachel removed Mom and Dad from the rest of the wedding logistics. Not from the wedding. Just from control. All vendor communication went through Rachel or Owen. No payments through my parents. No last-minute guest changes. No menu changes. No Mom said or Dad said. For the first time in years, Rachel and I had to talk directly. It was uncomfortable. We were rusty. A day before the wedding, she came to see me. She sat at my kitchen table and said, "I should have asked you." I said, "Yes." She looked like she expected more comfort from me. I didn't give it immediately. She said, "I thought you were pulling away. You could have asked." I know. You believed them pretty fast. Her face tightened. So did you. That was fair. I had believed she wanted me gone after one cold text and my parents' version of events. I looked down at my hands. "Yeah," I said. "I did." That was probably the first real conversation we had had in years. Not a good twin pretending everything was fine. Not a difficult twin trying not to cause trouble. Just two adults admitting we had let other people speak for us. Rachel said, "I don't know what happens with Mom and Dad after this." I said, "Neither do I." She asked if I hated her. I told her no. I also told her I was not ready to pretend we were suddenly close again because one lie had been exposed. She cried a little. So did I. There was no big reconciliation. We talked for another hour. Then she left. I went to the wedding ceremony. I almost didn't. The morning of, I stood in my room in my dress and thought about staying home. Then Rachel texted me directly. "No Mom. No Dad. Just her. Front row. Left side. I saved you a seat." For some reason, that hit me harder than all the apologies. At the original rehearsal dinner seating chart, there had been a chair for me. Rachel showed me the earlier version after the ER. My name had been there. In the final printed version, it was gone. Mom had asked for it to be removed after telling Rachel I did not want to attend. At the wedding, there was a chair with my name on it in the front row. Rachel had put it there herself. I sat in it. My parents were a few seats away. Mom barely looked at me. Dad said hello like we were coworkers after a bad meeting. I was not interested in fixing that before the ceremony. Rachel got married. Owen looked relieved when he saw me. At the reception, I stayed long enough to eat the meal Rachel and I had personally confirmed with the caterer. She actually came with me when I spoke to the catering captain. No eye rolling. No food thing. No one acted like making sure I could eat safely was a character flaw. Later, Rachel found me near the edge of the room. She tapped the side of her leg twice. Our old signal. I laughed because I had not seen it in years. I tapped twice back. We did not leave together this time. She had a wedding to return to. I had had enough family for one night. But it was the first time in a long time that the signal felt like it belonged to us again. Things with my parents are still bad. Mom has apologized in pieces. She says she should have communicated better. She says she misjudged the restaurant situation. She has not said, "I lied to both of you because I wanted control." Dad still insists everyone made mistakes. I told him I agree. Mine was letting them speak for me for too long. He didn't like that answer. Rachel and I are talking more now. Not every day. Not like when we were kids. We are rebuilding something, but it is slower and more awkward than people like to imagine twin relationships should be. There are still moments when one of us says, "Mom told me," and then stops mid-sentence. Now we call each other. I didn't get my deposit back. I didn't get the family I thought I had back either. What I got was the truth about how that family had been working. For years, I thought if I was useful enough, quiet enough, generous enough, and careful not to inconvenience anyone, eventually they would stop treating me like the difficult twin. They did not. They just got more comfortable using what I gave them while telling other people I was the problem. The chair at the wedding did not erase the empty chair at the rehearsal dinner. It did not fix the ER visit. It did not make Rachel and me instantly close. But Rachel chose to put that chair there herself. No one removed my name. No one decided for her what I meant. And for the first time in a long time, I was not paying for the privilege of being left out. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.